Okay, so I guess, I don't have to, in terms of motivation, I don't really shouldn't be talking too much about it, because this is one of those, the question that's pursued here is one of those questions that is really, one of the big questions in economics is what, makes some societies or groups poor and makes other societies rich. Right? And so that's like the main, we're all interested in this, and here the focus is happens to be on the subject we're even more interested in, which is American Indian reservations. And so what the authors here are doing is taking, I guess my sense of this was just taking another fresh look at it, right? And you've got a neat data set, I'll talk about this in a second. But what sort of distinguishes this a little bit from earlier work is that I have a lot of controls and they're focused on, or at least that's my sense, is that you really wanted to divide and to distinguish between internal versus external contributing factors. And internal factors are sort of the internal institutions of how the tribes are run. Internally, it's about overcoming collective action problems, these kind of things. And then the external one is, which of course is not really external, but that's grouped into external is, whether or not they have gaming operations going on. And then there's regional trends, economic trends. How much do regional trends contribute to growth and to the income changes that we're observing here? The data that is, so the data that we're looking at here are from 80, in the end, there are 80 reservations that have sufficient data, and we're looking at essentially three collection points, 1990, 2000, and 2010. And then the strategy that they're using is OLS. The main results, that's my takeaway from what I read here, is really institutions matter, internal governance matters, which is in a sense great. I really like that kind of result because I'm a big institution person. I'm one of these people that so I say, oh, it's the institutions, stupid, of course. So this really seriously fits into my own narrative that I have about development. What is sort of less obvious here is that you said in the beginning to motivate it, where are you? To motivate it, you said, well, everybody thinks it's about gaming, and so you don't find anything on gaming, but then it's sort of the question why. And you just mentioned, well, it's because we're capturing this with the regional growth, but then the regional variables actually aren't very important either. So this then feeds a little bit back to the work that I'm doing with Fernando, where we're looking at partly at bands who are doing, they develop the land, so they use the land that they have, they manage it, with designations, for instance, to build businesses, build a golf course, or establish or build a condo development or a winery or whatever else they're doing, and that should presumably generate some revenue. And the question is, where does this revenue go? Like, why do we not see the revenue translating into income? And partly that might be lags that we're not capturing, but it's still sort of, it fits, with, I kind of see this, yeah, okay, so this is exactly what we're finding. You've got this revenue source that's undeniably there, but we don't see this translating into real incomes in any way. And so really what's important, at least what comes out as an important factor that's correlated is just institutions, and there the most important one is the executive leader. So better governance is kind of the answer to the question of, at least given the data that we have here about why, some tribes are doing better than others maybe. Okay. I have some comments and suggestions. My first comment is that this is quite informative and it's important since you're also looking at bringing this to practitioners. I would be thinking about different outcome variables, not just real income growth. So if you want to look at, you want to look at health outcomes, you want to look at educational outcomes. If there is, income being generated or revenue being generated, that might be going to infrastructure, like Do we see changes in infrastructure? Is something built on reserve? Is there on reservations? Is there schools happening? And those things are lagged further than what your data are maybe capable of. But I think it's important, both for the understanding the context more, but also for those people who are interested in this kind of work. They want to know, and well-being is not just the real income. The other thing that's more like a comment that's quickly fixed in a sense. You're looking at longitudinal data. I didn't see that you're clustering your standard errors. Maybe you do, but if you don't, maybe you do want to do that because you're looking at tribes at different points of time. Those observations will be correlated. And then in the same way, in the same kind of vein, is that I think the main challenge here is that you can have an unobserved omitted variable that's driving everything. It's not just the indigeneity problem, which you talk about in the paper. It's really like, what if you have a strong leader? That strong leader has, made sure, came about because, is correlated with the veto with strong institutions, but it's also correlated with outcomes. Or you had a negative shock. The negative shock, got the band into early gaming because they needed to generate revenue, but income is correlated over time, so the shock is driving both, leading you to underestimate the gaming effect. So, and so there's a couple of ways to go around this, and maybe one of the easiest fixes would be to think about historic institutions and go way back, and then use them as instruments for current institutions if you don't have a lot of institutional change. So I think there's some easy fixes that you could do that would make the argument a little bit stronger. Okay, so that's fine.